Are you ready to journey into the circle? Today, we're having an unfiltered discussion with Michelle, who has been battling bipolar depression for years. Mental health can be a reluctant topic of discussion. We hope this episode will encourage you to support those around you battling mental health. This episode of In the Circle is brought to you by Bridge Tech Group, specializing in digital marketing services for small businesses. Get more details on their website at bridgetechgroup.com. The topic of discussion is bipolar depression. And I know that mental health and discussions around mental health is not usually talked about, especially in, Black communities. So, we appreciate you coming on and discussing it. And I know that it will help other people as well. So let's get right into it. What is bipolar depression?
Bipolar depression, to me, is the worst thing ever.
Wow.
Bipolar depression is the worst thing ever. It is worse than regular depression. It's different.
Mm-hmm. So have you always had bipolar depression? When were you diagnosed with bipolar, and what led up to? Tell me the story behind you getting to where you actually had a diagnosis of bipolar depression.
Okay, it started with I got sick at work where I inhaled a chemical that almost could have killed me. And I got asthma as a result of it. I have chronic asthma. And in the midst of me being ill, my place of work decided to terminate my employment. What they did was the night of my birthday, 2008, was after 10 o'clock at night, they sent a courier service to my home with a letter to take to take my job and take away the L card and everything. So I had no job, right? I had no job. So that's where the depression started. So it started with depression, and I went from different stages. My brain went through a roller coaster. A lot of things went through my brain. My brain, at one point, it reached a point where I could not feel anything. I was hungry and I can't feel it. If I was in pain, I could not feel it. There was a time I didn't sleep for days, did not sleep for days. And I was seeing one doctor, but then she got pregnant. And every time I called to make an appointment, she would put me off. And then I ended up had to see another doctor. Now that doctor, when I was telling her that something was wrong, because I knew something was wrong. And she would not listen to me. She suggested that I go to Ward 21, and I told her no. And then she in turn gave me a medication, because the medications that I got before, they stopped working, wasn't working anymore. And then when I saw that doctor now, she gave me a medication that almost twist up my face. And it was one of my brother, because I was getting from bad to worse. And then there was a time I said to myself, can it get any worse? And it did get worse, and I could not believe it. It reached a point where my brain slowed right down. And through all of what was happening to me, I knew that something was wrong, because even reaching out, because there's a stigma. There's a lot of stigma, because when I was trying to reach out to even family members, letting them know that something is wrong, nobody wanted to listen to me. They were telling me that I'm the one that did I'm doing it to myself. What am I worried about? And I knew that something was wrong.
Yes.
Right? There was a time when I could not sleep. It's like whenever I fell asleep, there's something that would like wake me up and tell me that if you fall asleep, you're gonna lose your mind and you're not gonna know.
Mm-mm.
And yep, and then when I went to this doctor and she gave me the medication, I took a half of the medication and somebody said to me, why did you take a half of the tablet? Why didn't you take one? And I took one and the side effects was where um nearly twisted my jawbone.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my sister in Canada, she even tried to reach out to my family members, telling them that something is wrong. Nobody would listen. And she called one of my brothers one day and asked him, saying to him that you need to go see Michelle because something is wrong.
Wrong.
And
Yes.
when I had that seizure where the side effects of that medication, one of my sister came here. She came here for me and she was going to take me to the doctor in Kingston, and I told her, no, go to the regular doctor. When that doctor saw me, he was shocked. Could not believe what he saw. And
Yes.
she
So,
took me to.
Michelle, before we go into the doctor and what happened,
Mm-hmm.
I just want to get some clarification because the people that are listening to this are international people from
Okay.
all over the
Mm-hmm.
world. And so we just want to make sure we understand. So you reside in Jamaica because I
And,
heard you mention Kingston.
yeah, I'm living in
Yes.
Portmore.
Okay. And then you also mentioned that Ward 21.
They send people with mental illness.
Oh,
When they say people are
okay.
mad,
So
right?
yes.
She
Yes.
suggested,
And
yeah, the doctor suggested that.
so the doctor suggested that you go
Go
to
to
a mental
our
institution.
institution, right? And I told her no,
Wow.
right?
Wow.
Yep.
Wow. Wow. And it's interesting too because I think other people can relate to you that have this I don't know if it's classed as a disease. I'm also learning through the process that it's hard for family members to understand, especially when it's starting to come on. And
Mm-hmm.
also the whole medication process, the different medication that you need to take. So I think
Mm-hmm.
where we had left off was you had taken a medication that was
Right.
prescribed
Mm-hmm.
and it had a
But
negative effect. It sounded like you said you had a seizure.
right.
Okay. So what happened after that? I think you said your sister came over.
Right, and she took me
Mm-hmm.
to her home because I could not be by myself because I couldn't even drive. And my
Mm-hmm.
brother came to see me, and I was able to talk to him. He sat and he listened to me because nobody would listen to me, and he listened to me, and that's where he called one of his doctor friend, that's Doctor Jeffrey Walcott,
Mm-hmm.
for me to see him, and I saw him on a Sunday. And guess what? When I saw him, I was actually shaking, shaking. If you saw me, you would cry.
We will continue our discussion with Michelle right after a quick note from our sponsor. At Bridge Tech Group, they understand social media can be daunting. Let them guide you through the maze and turn those social platforms into revenue generators. You can find them at bridgetechgroup.com. Yes, Michelle. So let's pick up back from where when
Mm.
your sister came over and she took you to the doctor.
No, my brother, he's the one that actually listened to what I had to say. Nobody else would
Yes.
listen to me. He's the first person that actually listened. And then he called one of his doctor friend, Dr. Jeffrey Walcott, and I saw Dr. Walcott at the time on a Sunday, and he told me that I was very, very ill. And he was not going to send me to Ward 21. He would put me in another institution for 5 days. That's when I started to take medication for the illness. And he told me that if within the 5 days feeling better, that's when he would send me to the hospital. So when I started to take the medication, the first thing he said to me, ensure that you do brisk walking. And when I started to take that medication, that's when I started to feel better and feel better. When I went to him on the 5 days after, I asked him after a while, I asked him what had happened to me. He told me that my brain went for a walk. So when I saw the doctor, I was actually manic. I was at the
Mm.
point of losing my mind. So that
Wow.
doctor is a doctor that saved my life. And I was diagnosed at the time with major depression. It was major depression at the time.
Yes.
And it took me a while because even the medication that I take, I have learned a lot from the medication on my own to the point where I can actually teach the doctor something, read a medication. And when I started to take that medication and I started to feel better, I stopped and I thought that was the right thing to do. And then I started to get sick.
Oh, so when you
And
say
I
you start to
just,
get sick, what do you mean?
your head has this weird feeling. It's very hard to explain. It's not normal. It's weird feeling. You don't feel like yourself. You don't feel like you any at all.
Wow, wow.
Yes.
So,
And
because I know a lot of people that have, well, I shouldn't say a lot, but for many people that have an illness, whether it's mental or physical, and they start to feel better, they stop taking the medication.
mhm,
But
that's
that sounds like, and people always say that should not be the case.
no. That's what I've learned over the years of taking the medication. And I have learned over the years to manage the illness, to manage the illness. It was in 2010 because I had to go through a lot because I started to go to the gym to do exercise, and at one point I had to stop because of my asthma. And then there was a time that went back to the gym, and I realized that the more I exercised, the better I felt. The more
Wow,
exercise, the
wow.
better I felt. So I started to use exercise now. Is that the exercise is my medication,
Hmm.
right? But before that, in 2010, it's like with no, I wouldn't say bipolar because was not bipolar at the time. I was doing stuff to ensure that I was okay. Anything to make me feel better, I was doing it. If something is gonna cause me not to do well, I would find a solution to help myself. And there was a time I went abroad and I came back and I had to go do some test, asthma test, and that test caused me to develop bronchitis. So I was not able to go to the gym. I was not able to do a lot of stuff that was helping me to manage the illness. So I started to get sick.
Mm.
I started to get sick again, right? And what I learned with the medication that I take, when you're doing when you take the medication, when you're not feeling well, you'll take a dose, and then if you're still not feeling well, you go on a higher dose, and then you go on a even higher dose, and then the dose settles you. And when it settles you now, you can slowly come down on the medication. That's what I've learned about my medication. In
Oh,
2010, I was doing a lot of stuff. I think it was after, yes, it was after I got ill with I wasn't able to go to the gym and all of that.
yes.
And I remember I was driving and felt my brain was running away. Like it felt like it was running away, and I said something is wrong, something is wrong. And then I called my doctor and I made an appointment. And it reached a point where I was shaking again. I couldn't even like button my clothes. I
Mm-mm.
couldn't button my clothes, and I went to church. And while in church, is that my brain was in this hour like it wanted the preacher to just end the service. And I went to the doctor afterwards, and I was telling him what was happening. I was even like spending money, not realizing that something was wrong because I was doing the things to make me feel better. So I don't want to get sick.
Mm-hmm.
That's when he told me that I am now bipolar, but I'm bipolar too.
Wow. So there's
Yes.
more than one. How many bipolars are
There's
there?
bipolar. There's bipolar one. That's a really really bad one.
Mm-hmm.
A man may go up on top of the roof and feel like he can fly. That's
Right.
bipolar one. But I went in a bookstore one day to search for something for someone, and I
Yes.
saw two books: Bipolar Survival Guide and Bipolar Question and Answer. And I decided to read Survival Guide first. And that book tells no lies. It tells no lies. The things that I was able to associate with, I could highlight them. And
Mm.
when it tells you that it is an ill, it's just like if you have high blood pressure or sugar, you can only manage the illness. You can manage the illness. And when they spoke about how to manage it, I realized that I was already doing stuff to help myself to
Yes.
manage the illness, because over the years it causes you to make bad decisions, right? With the bipolar, it causes you to what I did when I know I'm not doing well, I just stay by myself because I don't want to make
Wow.
any errors. Yes, I stay by
Yes.
myself
It's
because
sort of a
and the first
protection. You're
right
trying to
and the first
protect
thing,
yourself.
yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
what I tell people all, because there's a stigma. There's a stigma, and the first person I experience a stigma with is a disabled person. Because people think
Really?
that, yes, people think that once you say you are bipolar, you're supposed to look a certain way and you're supposed to act a certain way. That's not how it is.
Mm.
So that's where the stigma comes. If you say you're bipolar, they expect you to look a certain way or act a certain way. And that's not how it is. So
So it is. It changes. So what do you want people to understand then when
the
they,
first,
if
yeah,
they come in contact with you? What do you want them to understand about about being bipolar, about having to deal with bipolar depression?
depression, no, the depression aspect of it, it's different. Because with bipolar, it reached a point where first thing you have to do is accept that something is wrong. You have to accept that something is wrong, because the problem that a lot of persons have, they're in denial with the illness, and that's why a lot of persons are sick, because they're in denial. They don't, the moment they feel, they don't want to take the medication, they don't want to do the things that they're supposed to do. You have to accept that something is wrong, and then you have to deal with it. Because I've experienced where persons that were in denial, where I am concerned, because I said, no, this is not the Michelle I know. And they don't believe. If you try to talk, I try to talk to persons about what's happening to me, they don't want to hear. And I've seen where some of those persons ended up asking me for advice because they have a relative that is not well. Because a lot of persons are proud of me of the way, because if I don't tell somebody that something is wrong,
Hmm.
they're not going to know.
They're not going to
They're
know.
not
And
going to know.
do you think that's a very important step for anyone dealing with with bipolar or bipolar depression to make sure that they're communicating how they're feeling versus hiding it?
You see what happens because of the stigma, a lot of persons are afraid. Because
Ah.
even my doctor, the, those persons that are rich and their family members that are not well, he does house visits, or
Oh.
they see him at a particular location. They're not going to let their sick relatives see him in Kingston. They see him in Spanish Town.
So the wealthy people hide it
The most of
away
them they
as if
hide
it's
it.
not there.
Yes, right.
Hmm.
Yeah, they hide it. And over the years, I've learned to manage the bipolar. Now, the bipolar depression now is a different kettle of fish. It's a different
Hmm.
because it has reached a point where even if somebody's going through something, I'm able to motivate and encourage them, and The depression part now, that part is different. Because since I've experienced depression and then the bipolar depression now, that's a total different thing. It causes confusion in the brain. It causes you to isolate yourself from persons, and sometimes it takes you a while to realize that you're isolating yourself, and it is not a good thing. It's best to have people to talk to. But my doctor now, he always sees me as his best patient. He says he wishes his patients were like me.
And why did he say that?
Because the last time I saw him, because he's the one that told me that I'm now dealing with bipolar depression, right? He says that he trusts no one. He trusts no one, but he trusts me because he knows that I'm going to take my medication. Because there are times when I'm not well and I call him, and for him, Michelle is superwoman. She knows what to do, but there are times when something is happening that I'm not familiar with. I never experienced it before, so I have to actually call him. I have to go and see him. The bipolar depression, there are days when it causes you to be on a low.
Yes.
Most of the time you're on a low, and honestly I rather deal with the high than the low.
So
Yes.
what's the difference? What's the difference? So on any given day when you're dealing with, say, the high, how do you feel?
Since I've been suffering from the bipolar depression, I have not had any high. You don't feel like yourself. You don't feel there's this normalcy that you're waiting on to come. If it comes for me, the longest that lasted since I've been dealing with bipolar depression is a week. And then you go right back. It's like you're fighting with your brain. There are days you have to be there are days when you feel like you're not gonna survive. You feel like you're gonna die. There are days that you feel like you don't want to exist anymore. And then when it reaches that point, you have to try your best and not try your best and try to block it. Because even when I saw my doctor and he said to me, Michelle, I know the suicidal thoughts are there, but you're not saying anything. I said, well, I block them. It's not a nice place to be.
No, it's not a nice place to be at all.
For me now, what happened is that the exercise is what I normally use to help me with what I am dealing with what I'm going through. And I'm not able to do exercise like I used to before. So I'm between a rock and a hard stone. Because I have a spinal problem from a long-time motor vehicle accident.
So just so I understand, because I've heard different things come up. So I think you had said asthma, then bronchitis, then it was followed by the bipolar, then there's bipolar depression, and then on top of all that, you have a spinal issue from a car accident. Did I sum that up correctly?
Yep.
So how do you live alone?
Yes, I do. And that's the next part of it, being by yourself. It's not.
How do you manage? I mean, on a day-to-day basis, if there's anyone else out there that is going through all of this that you're going through, I mean, your doctor has the right to call you superwoman. For anyone that is going through, how do you explain to them to get through each day? I mean, do you take it a day at a time or do you take it an hour at a time? How do you try and manage through all of this?
It's very hard, and each day is a blessing, because when you wake up, the worst part is that weird feeling in your head. You don't feel like yourself any at all. Some days I'll just sit one place and not move. And not move.
All day.
All day, just sit one place and not move. Some there are days I won't even open the front door. And what helps at times
Wow.
also is if when somebody will call me to talk to me, you have some persons who will check on me and stuff. And even the fact you have the coronavirus now, you're not able to have persons over like you used to do before.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'll
Yes.
do to escape also, I will go to Kingston by one of my brother and stay there for me to have somebody around me. That actually like most of the time to me save my life.
Yes.
To have somebody around. So it is important to have people around you.
People around you.
Yes, it is.
And people, and not just, I mean, people that understand
Understand
at least
and
a little
and it is
of what it
yes.
is that you're going
Yes, and
through.
it is also easier to talk to someone who understands what you're going through.
So how many medications are you on
Okay.
to help you through this?
All right. There's one medication that I take for it. And the medication that I got the other day from my doctor that actually helped, when I asked him for that medication the other day, he said, no, can't give it to me because it causes liver problem. So,
Mm.
and then no, the medication that I'm taking, the thing is, when you're dealing with the bipolar and you take the medication, you may go up on the dose and you find a dose that will settle you. And then you can take your time and cut the dose down until you're okay. With depression, it's very hard, it's more difficult because
It's more difficult to
it is more
manage.
difficult to manage with the medication because I've been on a dose that I've never taken so much of that dose at one time, even when I just started to take the medication. And you'll be on that dose for a while and you cut the dose down. You feel a little better and you cut the dose down. You cut the dose down today, you feel okay, and tomorrow you go right back to square one.
So you are on two different medication, one
One,
for the bipolar and one for the
no
depression?
man, one medication.
One
One
medication for to
medication.
treat both
Yes,
condition.
because the
Wow.
doctor says he cannot add anything to the medication and he cannot um change the medication for me because of the dangers of the other medications.
So for the medication that you're on, there must be, with all medication, there are side effects.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the side effects that you are dealing with the medication that you're on now?
Um, all right, this medication is steroid. It causes weight gain, but because of the fact that I've learned to trick the medication, because if you eat and take the medication, it will knock you out cold. So
Oh,
you
when you say knock you out, you
knock
mean
you
it make you
out.
want to sleep?
Yes, it knocks you out because the medication sedates you. It puts you to sleep. And the higher the dose, for me, the higher the dose, I think the more dangerous it is. Because if you're on a very high dose and you take the medication, the place will be burning down and you don't know. Because you're not going to
Wow.
know. That's why it is important for me to, even if I'm taking to be on a even smaller dose of the medication. And that is what I've been trying to work on. But because of the bipolar depression, it's harder to deal with, harder to gauge the medication because you feel okay and then tomorrow you don't feel okay. So you have to go back up on the medication.
So I know you had mentioned some dates before, some timelines before, but if you were to sum all of that up, how long has it been that you have not been well? How many years are we talking about?
Since 2008.
Wow.
2008. October 2008.
So do you how do you plan, I mean, in your head, because
Okay.
you're dealing with a lot. How, how do you see
The
the
future.
future of Michelle, and handling, bipolar depression?
The other day, when I was doing last year, 2019, I was doing well. And when the spinal problem started, I was going through a lot of unbearable pain and all of that. There are days that I could not walk. And with all of that was going on, I held it together. And when I went to the pain clinic and they mentioned surgical procedure, that's when it's like the sickness creeped upon me again like a thief in the night. And I said to
Mm.
myself, I was in the kitchen one day, and I said to myself, how much longer? Because I didn't know that this thing would ever happen again because I was doing so well. How much longer may I have to deal with this? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If you, how I used to deal with it before is like I didn't think about next year any at all. I just go day by day,
Day
each
by
day by
day.
day by day. That's how I used to deal with it. But now with the depression, it makes your brain is all over the place, and it's like to think about the future.
It's too
Yes,
daunting.
you can. Yeah, you can't see a way out because your brain is not. Is your brain don't feel normal. It don't feel normal. Doesn't feel normal, and it's not. You just want to feel, just dying to feel that normalcy, but your brain don't feel normal. So I'm still trying with
Mm-hmm.
the bipolar depression. I am still trying to cope with it. I'm trying to cope, and
Yeah.
let me say it is very difficult. There are certain things that you don't want to think about, and sometimes, like when it feels like when everything is going wrong, the
Yes.
brain goes through a trauma. So when the brain goes through the trauma, when everything is going wrong, when we're not feeling well, this is happening, that is happening, then it sets you right back. Because the other day, um, the spinal problem have a nerve problem, right? And there's a nerve
Mm-hmm.
medication that I got. I did not know that I'm not supposed to take nerve tablet with the bipolar medication. Cause problem. I did not
Wow.
know that, and I was getting sick. And it's when I start to ask questions. Because even though you tell them at the clinic that you're taking the medication, they don't advise that you're not supposed to take both of them together. Right. So
Exactly.
there are days, what was happening between a rock and a hard stone. So the other day, it acted upon me really bad. And I had to take the nerve tablet. And for some reason, I stopped taking the bipolar medication. And then the nerve thing got really, I was not doing too bad mentally. And then it got really bad. And when it got really bad, I had to take a high dose of the nerve tablet. And this nerve
Mm-hmm.
tablet, I noticed that if I go on a high dose, it's a different thing. And I had to do it to get rid of the nerve pain. And the moment I went high on the nerve pill, I started to get sick. So I stopped taking the nerve pill. I
So
was
it
feeling better one way, and then the other problem started on me.
started the other way. So as you said, you're between a rock
They're in
and
between
a
a rock
hard
and
place a lot of
yes,
times, trying to deal with
right.
this. So so it sounds to me like on any given day, you're not really sure what to expect. You have to go
No,
into each
because
day
they're okay,
prepared.
because I will get up in the morning and I'm not feeling like myself, right? And sometimes by the evening I won't feel too bad. There are nights I am afraid to go to my bed because I don't know what's gonna happen the next day. When I get up, I may get up and feel worse or may I get up and feel a little better. So the bipolar depression, it's a struggle. It's
Mm-hmm.
very hard, and I'm still trying to manage it. Like I said, I'm not able to do the exercise like I used to. So the thing that I know that would help me, I'm not able to do. So I'm trying to cope with it.
Yes, yes. So, I noticed you used the word manage, and I just want the
Mm,
audience to understand because this isn't something that you can cure. There isn't, it doesn't sound like there's a fix. It
mm-mm.
just sounds like you have to
Have to
manage it the
try to
best way
manage the
possible.
best way.
Is that a true
Yes,
statement?
yes, to manage. So you have to accept the fact that it may not go anywhere. Not going anywhere. So you have to learn to manage.
You have
Yes,
to.
to manage. And yeah, and
Wow. And as you said, it's different on a daily basis.
yes,
So you have to manage and
yes,
revisit
yes.
managing it daily.
And
So with all that you have explained, what what is it that you want people, especially those that are connected with you, family and friends, acquaintances, what is it that you want them to understand about what you're dealing with and how they can support you? And this is also the same, I guess, for anyone that's out there dealing with anything similar to what you're going through.
um, there are times when I'm not doing well and I don't talk to anybody, but then somebody would call and check on me. So once you have good support system, that is very important. Persons who understand what is going on. There sometimes my sister will call me and she said to me,
Mhm.
she's not telling me anything negative. She's conscious of the fact that I'm not doing well, so she don't want to bring any negativity. And the next thing, being around negativity is unhealthy. Being around negative
Okay.
people, that
Yeah.
is unhealthy. So you have to try to be.
It compounds the
Yes, yes.
problem.
And if somebody is talking to you and they're too negative, that affects you because you're feeding off their negative energy. It's best to have positive persons around you. And it's best to avoid stress. If avoid stress,
Mm.
sometimes it's unavoidable. Because with the bipolar depression, it is definitely unavoidable. If when you deal with bipolar, you can avoid it, but with the bipolar depression, it's kind of unavoidable. So if you have a very good support
Mm.
system, persons who understand what's going on with you, then you're fine. Good support
Yeah, and
system.
it sounds like you need to make sure that you're an advocate for yourself. You have to ask
Yes.
questions and medication coming your way and dealing with daily.
Mm.
It's like you have to be an advocate for yourself, even though you're not a
Yes,
hundred
because
percent yourself.
the key is not to give up. No matter what, never give up. There are days when I feel like giving up. I said there are days I feel like I'm fighting for my life. But the key is not to give up. The best feeling, is when I feel normal. Because there are times when I'm down. There are days when I break down because I can't manage. Especially if I go high on the medication and on it for a while and then I go
Mm-hmm.
down and then something, even if I have a sleep disturbance, is a problem. Is that the brain, and then the brain go through trauma and you feel like so there are days I feel like that's it. But then when you start taking medication, like I said, my doctor told me that he trusts no one, but he trusts me to take my medication. He says that most of his patients he has them on injection. Yes,
Ah, because
they
they
don't
don't
want to
want
take
to take the
their medication.
medication.
So when you're on the when you have to go start, like you start back from scratch, you start back from scratch, and when days pass and you start to feel better, it's a total different. It's like you said to yourself then, when all you felt before and you feel like that was it, and when you feel like this now, it's a joy to feel
Mm-hmm.
normal, to feel like yourself.
Right.
Yes, to feel normal. Tomorrow you may feel down, and then days after, when you feel like you can't make it, and then days after, you feel different. So even if the suicidal thought came, then, and you see how you feel now, it's a joy. It's a joy to feel
Mm-hmm.
like yourself.
And that's why it's important not to give
Not to
up.
give up no matter what,
Not
because
to
you
give up.
never, because you know what somebody told me the other day? Tomorrow, today may be the best day for the rest of your life. Yes, the best
Mm-hmm.
day for the rest of your
That
life. Today
is
may be the best day for the rest of your life. So never,
especially
no,
dealing with
never
this
give up
type
no
of,
matter what. Never give up no matter what.
that is really
Mm-hmm.
strong, really
Yeah, man.
solid advice. And I think that
Yeah,
is
man.
a great
Yeah.
way for us to come to the end of the podcast with an
Mm-hmm.
encouraging thought for anyone out there that's dealing with a mental illness, or have a family member or a friend or an acquaintance that's dealing with mental
Mm-hmm.
illness. Michelle, thanks so much for sharing
Yeah,
your
man.
story. I'm sure it's going to impact many people, and we appreciate you putting that information out there. I have
Yeah,
learned a
man.
lot,
Thanks.
and I trust that others have learned as well, and we be able to approach mental illness with a more open mindset.
Okay.
Thank you for listening to this very eye-opening journey. If you feel led, please leave a word of encouragement for Michelle via the message link on the Anchor app, or add to our Facebook page by searching at In the Circle Podcast. So until next time, then, when we journey into the circle.